There are nights you still remember more by the feeling than by the details. Not the birthdays, not the parties, not the holidays. The nights you were alone with your thoughts, face turned toward the dark ceiling, and something in you finally broke. You didn't know how to pray the right way. You didn't have the energy to say religious words. You were too tired to explain your pain to God one more time. So you just lay there, breathing shallow, eyes burning until the first tear slipped out. Part of you thought, this doesn't matter, nothing is changing, I've cried before. But heaven was listening differently. From your side, it looked like another night where nothing moved. From heaven's side, it sounded like a frequency you were not aware of. The sound of a heart that has run out of speeches and is now speaking in its truest language. Tears. There were nights you didn't even bother to say Amen. You started a prayer and ended in silence. You whispered, God, and that was all you could manage. Then the room filled with a thick quietness that made you feel both seen and scared. You wondered, did he hear me? Does this count as prayer? Or am I just talking to myself in the dark? Your guardian angel was there, not in a painting, not with wings of marble. A real presence, stationed beside your bed, watching every shudder of your chest, every sentence that died in your throat, every tear that slid across your skin and disappeared into the pillow. To you, those tears felt small, embarrassing, maybe even weak. To heaven they were data. You thought you were just breaking down. Heaven knew you were translating. Because tears carry things your words don't know how to hold. They carry old disappointments you never got to grieve. They carry fear you've been hiding under jokes and distractions. They carry anger you were taught it wasn't Christian to admit. They carry exhaustion from trying to be strong for everyone else. You have believed that God mainly listens when you are composed, articulate, full of faith. But some of the clearest moments of communication between you and heaven have happened when you were none of those things. When you were done pretending you were fine. When you weren't performing for any audience. When your prayer life looked like staring at a wall and saying, I can't do this anymore. You didn't know it, but in those moments, your heart was broadcasting at full volume. Heaven did not need you to find the perfect sentences. Your tears already said, I am at the end of myself. I don't see a way out. I feel abandoned. I don't want to sin, but I don't know how to stand. I want you, but I don't know how to keep going. And God understood all of it. Your angel watched him listen, not as a distant judge tolerating your meltdown, but as a father who knows the sound of his child's pain without needing explanations. You thought nothing changed after those nights. You woke up to the same bills, the same loneliness, the same diagnosis, the same empty chair where someone used to sit. But if you could see what shifted in the unseen when you cried in his direction, you would never again call those tears wasted. There were battles that intensified the moment you broke, not because you were weak, but because heaven moved. Assignments strengthened, angels redirected, new protections put in place. Paths you couldn't see began to be cleared a few steps further down the road. You didn't feel any of that, you just felt tired. You wiped your face, told yourself to stop being dramatic, and tried to keep functioning. But heaven had already marked that night as a turning point, as a cry for help that did not vanish into the air, as a frequency they would keep responding to, even on days when you went back to thinking, nothing happened, nothing ever changes when I pray. You measured God's response by visible results. He measured his response by how much closer he drew to you, closer than your shame, closer than your numbness, closer than the lie that said you shouldn't feel this way. He came near to the sound of your tears. And whether you felt it or not, you were never once crying alone. Your tears did not start in adulthood. Long before you had big words for big feelings, your heart was already leaking. There were childhood moments you still feel in your body, even if the memories are blurry. The night you cried in your room because voices in the house were too loud, too sharp, too tense. You didn't know what the argument was about. You just knew the air felt heavy and unsafe. You pulled the covers over your head, pressed your face into the pillow, and let quiet tears fall, hoping no one would hear. No one came in. You thought no one noticed. Heaven did. Your guardian angel was already there then, not arriving later when you finally became religious, but present when you were still small, watching a child try to contain waves of emotion in a tiny frame. From your side, that night became just one of those memories. From heaven's side, it was data. I'm afraid. I don't feel safe. I don't know where to put this. There were other tears you were told to hide. Tears at school when someone laughed at you for how you looked, for what you didn't have, for what you believed. You blinked fast, forcing the sting back, because you learned very quickly that crying made you a target, so you swallowed it. You learned to cry in bathrooms, in pillows, in silence. You decided, feeling this much is dangerous. It makes life harder. It makes me weak. But heaven never changed its view. Those bathroom tears mattered as much as the ones in your bed. They carried messages no adult around you knew how to decode. I feel less than. I feel unseen. I feel like I don't belong. I don't know why I'm different. You may have never said any of that out loud, but your tears did. Your angel logged everyone. Not like a cold accountant keeping score, but like someone mapping where your heart was wounded, so that later, when God began to heal and lead you, heaven would already know where the fractures were. You have no idea how much of the way you react now was shaped by those early tears. The way you flinch when someone raises their voice, the way you shut down when conflict starts, the way you apologize for existing when you get in the way, the way you overwork so no one has a reason to reject you. Those reflexes were formed in rooms where you felt unprotected, rooms where your tears felt like weakness, even while heaven saw them as pure truth. Later, religion sometimes made it worse. You heard messages, spoken or implied, that strong faith means being happy, positive, victorious all the time. You learned to dress your pain in Christian language. I'm blessed. God is good. I can't complain. You said those words with a knot in your throat and tears threatening behind your eyes, afraid that if you admitted how tired, lonely, or disappointed you were, it would sound like ingratitude. So you hid in worship songs you didn't feel, smiles that hurt your face, and silence that slowly hardened your chest. From your side, you thought you were being respectful. From heaven's side, they were missing the sound of your real voice. Because God has never been threatened by honest tears. The Bible you've heard about is full of them. Prophets weeping, kings pouring out anguish, Jesus himself crying at a grave he was about to empty. Heaven is not impressed by your ability to pretend you're fine. Heaven is moved by your willingness to bring what is not fine into the light. Your guardian angel has watched what happens inside you when you let yourself actually cry in God's direction. Not as a performance, not as manipulation, but as surrender. The tension between your shoulder blades eases just a little. The tightness in your jaw loosens. The sentences you've been rehearsing fall apart. And what comes out instead is simple. I'm hurt. I'm scared. I'm disappointed. I don't understand. You think, this is messy. This is unspiritual. Heaven thinks now we're finally talking. Because those tears do not just express pain. They open doors. Doors for comfort you didn't know you needed. Doors for truth to replace lies you swallowed as a child. Doors for new guidance that takes into account the parts of you that were never listened to. You keep asking, why am I like this? Why do I react so strongly? Why do certain things break me so easily? Heaven remembers. It remembers the small version of you crying behind doors that never opened. It remembers the teenager version of you crying over words no one apologized for. It remembers the adult version of you crying in bathrooms at work because you were trying to be strong for everyone else. Every one of those nights registered on heaven's frequency. None of them were ignored. Some of the help you're receiving now, the wisdom, the boundaries, the people who finally see you, the messages that hit too close, are answers to tears you cried years ago and forgot. You assumed God said nothing back then because nothing changed overnight. But he has been slowly, steadily rebuilding a life around you where one day you will be able to hold what your younger self couldn't. Your angel has watched that rebuilding. They have guarded relationships that heal what others broke. They have nudged you away from environments that repeat old wounds. They have stood watch when God brought up old pain again, not to torment you, but to finally treat it. So when the tears come now, even if you are grown, even if you feel ridiculous for still feeling this deeply, heaven does not roll its eyes. Heaven recognizes the pattern. This is part of your language with God, a language that started long before you knew His name, long before you could string together a proper prayer, on nights when a small, tired child was broadcasting to the sky with nothing but tears and a heart that desperately needed to be heard. There are answers in your life right now that you still don't recognize as answers. You see them as random kindness, as luck, as a decent moment in an otherwise hard season. Heaven sees them as responses to what your tears were saying years ago. Think of the times you cried because of how you were treated, spoken over, dismissed, used, replaced. You never sat God down and said, "Please one day give me people who will see me, who won't use me, who will listen to my no, who will stay when I stop performing." You didn't have the words. You just had the hollow ache of being taken for granted. So you cried, quietly in the shower, on long walks late at night, and then life moved on. Later, without connecting the dots, you met someone who treated you differently, someone who didn't get angry when you set a boundary, someone who listened when you said, "I don't like that," someone who stayed when you had nothing to offer but your tired, honest self. You thought, "This is nice. I don't know why it feels so healing to be around them." Heaven knew exactly why. You were being given a small, living answer to the tears you cried over everyone who made you feel disposable. Your guardian angel remembered those nights. They saw your shoulders shake over people who never apologized. They heard you whisper, "I guess I'm just too much. I guess I'm easy to leave." So when God began to bring safe people into your orbit, your angel moved around them, protecting those connections, softening your triggers so you wouldn't sabotage them, whispering calm when fear screamed, "They'll hurt you too." You still had a choice. You could push them away. You could test them, pick fights, pull back. But the very existence of that kind of presence in your life was already an answer. Heaven saying, "You are not meant to be surrounded forever by people who drain you. I heard you when you cried over them. This is different. This is me showing you a new template for love." Other times, your tears weren't about people. They were about weight. The weight of always being behind. The weight of never having enough. The weight of watching others move forward while you stayed stuck. You didn't pray, "Lord, one day give me more stability, more wisdom with money, more order in my mind." You just cried over the chaos. Later, slowly, small changes came. A job that wasn't glamorous but steady, a skill you learned that brought a bit more income, a shift in your habits. You started writing things down, tracking, planning, making choices your younger self didn't know how to make. You thought you were just maturing, just getting older. Heaven knew you were being guided into the very stability you wept for without having language. Your angel has watched you miss these connections. You beat yourself up for still struggling, for not being further along, for not being where you think you should be. You forget how far you've already come from the nights you begged God to just make the pressure stop. You forget how unsafe your heart felt in your own hands back then. And yet you are still here, still breathing, still learning, still being led. Not because you've been perfect, but because someone has been answering the frequency of your tears with a long, patient timeline of help. Sometimes the answer to your tears looked like a closed door. You cried out, "God, please let them stay. Let them love me. Let this work out." And then they left anyway, or it collapsed, or it ended. You concluded, "He ignored me. My crying didn't move him. I must not matter that much." But what if your tears were saying more than you realized? Not just, "Let this relationship stay," but, "I want to feel loved. I want to feel safe. I don't want to go through that kind of pain again." Heaven heard all of that. And sometimes, the only way to truly answer those deeper cries was to remove the very thing you begged to keep. Because what you were asking for in words and what you were asking for in tears were not the same. Your words said, "Don't let them go." Your tears said, "Please don't let me be destroyed." God chose the deeper request. Your guardian angel stood in the shock of that loss with you, but they also knew you had been spared a slower breaking you wouldn't have survived. There are jobs you cried over losing that would have drained you dry if you'd stayed. There are dreams you cried over releasing that would have become cages if they had worked. Or there are seasons you cried through because God was stripping away everything unstable, and you didn't know He was making room for something that didn't wobble every time the wind blew. Your tears were prayers at a level you didn't understand. Heaven responded at that level. You wanted relief. God wanted healing. Relief is when the pain stops. Healing is when the root changes. Relief can come from numbing. Healing comes from truth. Your angel has watched God answer you with both. There were nights He gave you relief, moments of calm, unexpected sleep, a distraction that carried you through. And there were seasons He gave you healing, uncomfortable insight, new boundaries, shifts in your friendships, exposure of lies you'd believed for years. You resisted the healing because it didn't feel like an answer to your tears. It felt like more tears. But heaven knew that one day you would look back and realize, He wasn't ignoring me. He was going deeper than I was asking. He didn't just want to wipe my face. He wanted to change what kept breaking my heart in the same places. So when you think now, I never get answers, my prayers go nowhere, my tears don't matter, heaven gently pushes back. Look again at the people who feel different, at the strength you didn't used to have, at the clarity you now walk in around things you once tolerated. Those are not accidents. Those are echoes. Echoes of a God who heard you when all you could do was lie still in the dark, and who has been quietly, steadily building answers around your life to things you never had the courage to say out loud. There are nights you still resent. Nights when you cried until your head hurt, your eyes burned, your body felt empty, and then nothing in your circumstances shifted. You wiped your face, you checked your phone. You looked around the same room, the same bills, the same lonely bed, the same unresolved situation. You whispered, "See, nothing. Nothing happened. Nothing ever changes when I cry." From your side, that was the verdict. Tears, emotional collapse. Mourning, same reality. Conclusion, pointless. From heaven's side, those nights looked very different. Heaven is not limited to what you can see by sunrise. Your guardian angel watched two stories happen at once, the visible one on earth and the invisible one unfolding in the unseen. On earth, you turned off the light, stared at the ceiling, broke, and eventually fell into an exhausted sleep. In the unseen, those tears triggered movement, assignments adjusting, protections tightening, strategies shifting for battles you didn't know were even being fought. You wanted instant relief. Heaven was working on rescue. Relief can be given in a moment. Rescue often happens over time. You've been rescued more than once, in ways that only make sense looking back. The slow distance that grew between you and someone who would have shattered you if they stayed close. The gradual closing of a door you thought you needed, but later realized was slowly poisoning you. The inner strength that developed as you walked through a season you thought would kill you. You did not wake up the next day and say, "Ah yes, this must be the answer to last night's tears." You woke up feeling raw, confused, slightly ashamed for having broken down so hard. You tried to function. You went to work. You made coffee. You answered messages. You put on your normal face. But something subtle had shifted inside you. A line had been drawn. I cannot keep living exactly like this. You still didn't know what to do instead. You still felt powerless in many ways. Yet heaven saw that internal line as the beginning of a new chapter. Tears have a way of washing away illusions. Illusions like, "I'm fine, I can handle this forever. This isn't that bad. I don't really need help." When you finally break, those illusions slip down your face. What is left is the real you, the one who says, "God, I can't pretend anymore. I'm not fine. I'm at the end. I need you." Your angel has witnessed how powerfully heaven responds to that kind of honesty. Not always with a miracle on demand, but always with movement. Sometimes the movement is inside you. You find that after those nights you don't tolerate certain things the same way. You notice how exhausted you are by always saying yes. You notice how heavy you feel around certain people. You notice how little rest your soul gets in the places you spend the most time. Those realizations are not random. They are the light heaven turns on after your tears. You cried, "Help me." Oi! And help began with God showing you what is actually hurting you. Other times, the movement is outside you. Someone leaves, someone arrives, something breaks, something opens. You don't connect it to that night. You just think, life is chaotic, things happen. But heaven saw that moment as a response. You said, "I can't go on like this." Heaven began to take you at your word. Not always the way you imagined. You wanted the pain removed. He wanted the whole structure of your life shifted into something that wouldn't keep breaking you. That kind of restructuring often hurts. It feels like everything is falling apart. You tell yourself, "I shouldn't have cried, I stirred things up, now it's worse." But the truth is, things were already worse on the inside. You were already falling apart quietly. Your tears simply brought it to the surface, and God, who refuses to ignore what is real, began to move. Your guardian angel has stood in the debris of those seasons with you. They watched doors close that you didn't want to lose. They watched you stand in the dust with empty hands saying, "This is not what I meant when I asked for help." Heaven understood. God heard beneath that sentence your real fear. Will you leave me like this? Did I break something you won't fix? The answer every time has been no. No, he will not leave you in the mess. No, he will not abandon you mid-rescue. No, he will not walk away because you misunderstood what it would feel like to be saved. Some nights nothing around you changes because the thing that needs to shift first is inside you. The belief that your tears don't matter, that your heart is annoying, that your pain is too small for heaven's attention. Heaven has never shared that belief. Your tears do not manipulate God. They do not buy miracles. They are not currency, but they are language, a language he takes seriously. The Psalms say he keeps your tears in a bottle, a way of saying he doesn't lose track of any of them. Your angel knows how literal that feels. They have watched heaven return years later to cries you forgot, building answers piece by piece into relationships, opportunities, strength, healing. And you stood in those answers thinking, "This is strange. This feels like exactly what I always needed and never knew how to ask for." You didn't recognize your own prayers being fulfilled. Heaven did. So on the nights when you feel the swell in your chest again, when you are tempted to shut everything down, to harden, to say, "What's the point? These tears won't change anything." Remember this, tears are not magic, but they are not meaningless either. They are a way your heart stops lying about how okay it is. They are a way you involuntarily confess, "I need more than what I have inside myself." And every time you do that in God's direction, even in a broken whisper with no amen, heaven leans in. Your guardian angel takes their place. The unseen story resumes its movement. And even if the morning after looks exactly the same, you can be sure that something has already shifted because God never hears the language of your tears and simply walks away. There are seasons you look back on now and say, "I don't recognize who I was." You remember how you tolerated things you would never tolerate today, how you chased people who treated you carelessly, how you shrank yourself to keep the peace, how you laughed at what hurt you just to avoid the silence that would follow honesty. You sometimes feel embarrassed by that version of you. How could I have stayed? How could I have believed that? How could I have called that love? How could I have done that to myself? You remember the tears you cried during those years with a mixture of shame and anger. I should have known better. I should have left sooner. I should have been stronger. Heaven remembers them differently. Your guardian angel does not see those tears as proof that you were weak. They see them as proof that even at your most confused, there was something in you that still knew the truth. You cried because your soul recognized what your mind was not yet ready to admit. This is hurting me. This is not who I am. This is costing me more than it should. This is not what I was made for. Your tears were protest, silent protest against a life that was slowly bending you out of the shape God gave you. You thought you were just being dramatic, too sensitive, too emotional. But heaven knew your tears were the part of you that refused to fully surrender to a version of life that contradicted who God said you are. Every time you cried after being disrespected, you were declaring, without knowing it, I was made to be treated with more honor than this. Every time you cried because you had to hide what you really felt or believed, you were declaring, I was made for truth, not performance. Every time you cried because you contorted yourself to stay chosen, you were declaring, I was made to be loved as I am, not as a mask. Your angel stood in those rooms where you thought no one saw you. Bathrooms with locked doors, cars parked on quiet streets, walks you took just to let tears fall without witnesses. They watched you look in the mirror after crying and say, pull it together, stop being so emotional, just deal with it. They also watched as heaven refused to let those tears go to waste. Because if God had left you in a state where you no longer cried over those things, it would have meant you had gone numb. Numb to disrespect, numb to dishonesty, numb to using and being used, numb to your own heart. And numbness is far more dangerous than tears. Tears mean something in you is still alive, still reacting, still saying, this isn't right. Numb. So while you shouted at yourself for not being strong enough, heaven was quietly grateful that you hadn't yet become someone who can sit in places that grieve God's heart and feel nothing. You may not realize how much your tears have protected you from becoming hard. There were opportunities you could have taken that promised comfort, but required you to shut off your conscience. You tried. You told yourself, I'll get used to it. Everybody does this. This is just how life works. But you cried. You cried in secret because you hated how it felt to betray yourself. You thought those tears were proof you weren't cut out for real life. Heaven thought they were proof you were still responsive to God's Spirit. You do not cry like this over sin and compromise if you are spiritually dead. Your angel has seen how those tears eventually pushed you to move. Not overnight, not suddenly brave, but little by little. You started saying no to certain jokes. You started declining certain invitations. You started admitting to yourself, I can't keep doing this, and call it normal. You didn't always know what to do instead. Sometimes you stayed in unhealthy places longer than you wanted because you didn't see a way out. Heaven saw you. They knew that when the opening came, a new option, a shift, a small window, you would recognize it because you had cried so many tears over what was breaking you. Your tears trained your heart to recognize relief when it showed up. You have also been protected from becoming someone else in more subtle ways. There were times you almost hardened. You almost decided never to trust again, never to be vulnerable again, never to hope again. You told yourself, that's it, I'm done caring this much, I'll be cold. And then, at the exact moment you were closing the door on your own tenderness, something broke in you again and you cried. You hated it. I was trying to stop feeling. Why am I still like this? Heaven knew you were being preserved from the kind of bitterness that eats people alive from the inside, preserved from building a life where your heart is always locked away, preserved from turning your pain into your identity. Your tears kept washing that bitterness out, not perfectly, not instantly, but enough that you still care, still want love, still desire truth, still long for God. That is not weakness. That is evidence of a heart he has refused to let die. Your angel has seen what people become when they successfully kill their own sensitivity. They become efficient, sharp, unreachable. They stop crying, and slowly they stop hearing. Not because God stops speaking, but because nothing inside them responds to him anymore. In all the moments you have wished you could stop feeling, stop crying, stop being moved, heaven has been answering, no. We will not let you become that version of yourself. You may carry scars, but you will still be soft. You may have history, but you will still be able to love and be loved. You may know disappointment, but you will still be able to recognize my presence and respond to it. So when you see your tears as proof that you are broken beyond repair, heaven sees them as proof that the deepest part of you has not surrendered to the lie that it's safer to stop feeling altogether. You are still reachable. You are still teachable. You are still being shaped, not into someone harder, but into someone who has walked through fire and somehow still has a heart that responds when God draws near. There are tears you cried that were not only about you. You thought you were just breaking down over your own story, your own loneliness, your own disappointments, your own fears about the future. But heaven was listening wider, because you rarely cry about something completely isolated. Your tears are often connected to a whole web of people and patterns. You wept over the way families break. You wept over the way children are ignored. You wept over the way addiction steals, over the way betrayal feels, over the way poverty crushes dignity. You thought, I'm too sensitive. Why does this hit me so hard? Why do I care this much when others scroll past it? Heaven saw something else. That sensitivity was not random. It was part of your calling. Your guardian angel has watched you carry burdens you thought were just personal overreactions. You saw a story, heard a testimony, passed a stranger sitting on the curb, and hours later you were still thinking about them, still feeling a weight in your chest, still fighting tears over someone you will probably never meet. You told yourself, this is ridiculous. I'm not responsible for every broken thing. And you're right. You are not responsible for everything. But you are responsible for how you respond to what God lets you feel. Some of your tears have been intercession, prayers born in emotion before you had a chance to turn them into words. You saw something wrong, and your spirit ached. You didn't know how to pray intricately about every situation. You just said, God, this hurts. Please do something. You thought that was too vague to matter. Heaven disagreed. Your angel has seen God take those simple, ache-filled tears and use them as part of his movement in the lives of others. No, you haven't single-handedly saved entire cities with one night of crying. But it is also true that heaven moves through human hearts that are willing to feel. Most people shield themselves. They scroll past suffering. They change the subject. They look away from anything that might ask too much of them. You don't always have that luxury. Your heart notices. It pulls. It hurts. You sometimes wish you had a colder soul. Heaven is glad you don't, because every time you allow yourself to feel with God about something, you are stepping into alignment with his own heart. He feels far more than you ever will. He feels the cries of every child, every broken marriage, every lonely room. You taste a fraction of that and it already feels like too much. So when you weep over things that did not happen to you personally, you are not being dramatic. You are echoing him. Your tears in those moments become agreement that this is not okay, that this is not what he intended, that this kind of pain was never meant to rule the world. Your guardian angel has stood beside you on nights when you said, I don't know what to pray. And heaven has answered, you just did, because some of the most powerful prayers are not long lists of specific requests. They are groans of, let your kingdom come here. Let your will be done here. Heal this. Move here. Defend them. Rescue them. Even when all that comes out is a choked, please. Heaven understands the full sentence. There are people whose stories have shifted because someone like you felt a sudden burden to pray for whoever needs it right now and cried without knowing why. You felt a weight you couldn't name. You said, God, help them, and tears flowed. You didn't see a vision. You didn't get a name. You didn't receive a report the next day. But your heart had tuned itself to a frequency that matched his urgency. Your angel was part of that. They saw the need. They heard God's desire to intervene. They moved to impress that weight on someone willing to feel it. You thought it was your own sadness coming out of nowhere. Sometimes it was. Sometimes it was heaven sharing just enough of a burden with you for you to partner with it. without crushing you under information you were never meant to carry. You may never know on this side of eternity how many lives your tears have touched. The child you prayed for in general, not knowing their name. The friend you suddenly couldn't stop thinking about, texted, and later found out they were at their breaking point. The situation you saw in passing, carried into the night in tears, and later heard had turned in an unexpected way. You call it coincidence. Heaven calls it coordination. None of this means you must live crushed under every burden you sense. You are not God. He does not ask you to feel everything He feels all the time. He asks you to stay reachable, to let your tears move you toward Him, not just inward into despair. When the weight comes, when you find yourself crying for people, for patterns, for things beyond your own story, you can pray something simple. God, I don't even know how to hold this, but You do. I agree with You for healing here, for protection here, for light here. Use these tears as You want, and show me what is mine to do and what is Yours alone. Your angel hears those words as release. Release of control you never had. Release of pressure to fix what you cannot. Release of the illusion that if you don't carry it all, no one will. You were never meant to be the savior, but you were meant to be a child whose heart resembles your Father's. Children like that will always cry at times over things others step over. That is part of your design. Your tears for others are not wasted sensitivity. They are a sign that heaven's frequency is strong in you, strong enough that your own story is not the only one you respond to. And when you feel too much, you can remember you are not the only one feeling it. The God who holds every tear of every life feels infinitely more and still chose to share even a fraction of His heart with you. You have a list of things you pray about. You mention your family, your finances, your health, your future. You try to remember the important topics, the right words, the things you think God expects to hear. But there is another list you rarely touch, the list under your list. The fears you're embarrassed by, the desires you're not sure you're allowed to have, the doubts you think a good believer shouldn't feel, the questions you've shoved so deep you barely admit them to yourself. You don't know how to bring those things into prayer, so they leak out in other ways, in sudden irritability, in numb scrolling, in late-night overeating, overspending, overthinking, and sometimes in tears. Tears that appear on nights when nothing specific happened, when no one said anything awful, when you can't point to any one trigger. You just feel full of unspoken disappointment, full of quiet envy of other people's lives, full of exhaustion from holding yourself together. You lie down, meaning to rest, and instead you feel it rise. The prickle in your eyes, the tightness in your throat, the heaviness in your chest. You tell yourself, not again, I don't even know what this is about. But heaven does. Your guardian angel has watched you stand on the edge of those tears and negotiate with yourself. I should be grateful. So many people have it worse. There's no reason to feel like this. I don't have the right to cry. You roll over, push your face into the pillow, try to swallow it back. Sometimes you succeed, locking it down for another day. Sometimes it slips past your defenses anyway. Tears come, quiet and angry. I don't even know what I'm crying about, you mutter. But your tears are not confused. They are translating a whole world of unsaid things. Things like, I'm tired of being strong for everyone else and never being the one who gets held. I'm afraid you will bless everyone around me and somehow skip me. I feel guilty for still being hurt by things I should be over. I don't know how to trust you with my future after all the times it felt like my prayers didn't work. You never write those lines into a prayer journal. You barely let them form as thoughts, but your tears carry them straight into God's presence. Your angel has watched this happen again and again. You lie there, convinced you are failing at faith, while heaven hears one of the most honest prayers you've prayed in months. Not because your theology is perfect, not because your attitude is polished, but because you are finally showing God the real condition of your heart. You think He only wants the cleaned-up version. He wants the true one. The psalm writers did not hold back. They said things like, "How long, Lord? Why have you forgotten me? My tears have been my food day and night." Heaven did not censor them. Heaven turned those cries into scripture because God wanted you to know that raw pain is not outside the boundaries of what He can hold. Your tears tonight carry the same right to be heard. There are desires you've never put into words with Him because you're afraid of the answer. You want companionship, you want restoration. You want a different kind of life than the one people expect for you. You tell yourself, if I don't ask, I can't be disappointed. So you try to erase them, but your tears betray you. When you see someone else receive what you've buried, the ache rises. You smile, clap, say, I'm happy for them. And you are, but there is a sting. You go home, close the door, and eventually the tears come. You don't have to say, I wanted that too, out loud. Your tears already did. Heaven is not offended by that. God is not jealous of your disappointment. He knows how deep some of your longings run, how long you've carried them. He knows which desires He planted and which ones grew out of wounds. Your angel has watched Him respond differently to each. Sometimes He comforts without giving the thing you asked for because the desire is attached to a lie about your worth. Sometimes He slowly reshapes the desire so that what you want begins to line up with who you really are in Him. Sometimes He keeps you waiting because the thing itself requires a timing you cannot yet see. But in all cases, He listens. There is nothing in your hidden list that He has not already read. When you cry, you are not surprising Him with new information. You are agreeing with what He's known all along, that your heart is more fragile, more complex, more thirsty than you let anyone see. And instead of rejecting you for that, He draws near. Your guardian angel has been present in the moments when you felt least spiritual, curled up on the bathroom floor saying, God, I can't even find you in this. And heaven was closer than in all the times you recited perfect-sounding prayers with your emotions turned off. There is a kind of prayer God values deeply, not the one that sounds impressive, but the one that is true. Your tears drag truth to the surface. Truth about where it hurts, truth about where you're scared, truth about where you feel forgotten, truth about where you're not sure you trust Him yet. He doesn't need you to hide that truth behind theology. He wants to meet you in it. So the next time the tears rise and you feel that familiar urge to shut them down, to tell yourself this is pointless, childish, wasteful, you can instead whisper something simple. God, whatever this is, you see it clearly. I don't even know how to name all of it, but I bring it to you. Read what I can't say, answer what I don't know how to ask, and don't let these tears turn me bitter. Turn them into something that brings me closer to you. Your angel will stand watch over that kind of prayer, because when you invite God to interpret your tears, you are no longer just having a breakdown. You are having a holy conversation. One where the deepest parts of you are finally allowed to be seen and heard by the only one who has always understood what you never quite managed to put into words. You underestimate how much has already changed in the way heaven moves around your life because of nights no one else even knows about. You see yourself as someone who breaks easily, who falls apart, who always ends up crying. Heaven sees someone whose heart refuses to go completely numb. And because of that, the way God leads you now is different from how He led you before. Your guardian angel has watched your journey. They remember the early days when you didn't know how to process anything, so you made choices just to stop the pain. You went back to what hurt because loneliness hurt worse. You stayed quiet in rooms where you should have spoken because conflict scared you more than disrespect. You accepted crumbs because it felt safer than risking having nothing. Your tears back then were often mixed with self-blame. I'm so stupid. Why do I always do this? Why can't I be stronger? Why do I feel like this over everything? Heaven heard something else. Underneath the self-hatred, your tears were saying, I don't know how to live yet without wounding myself. Teach me another way. God took that seriously. He did not just comfort you and then send you back into the same patterns forever. He began to adjust heaven's way of dealing with you. Like a parent who learns how sensitive their child is, who sees what environments shut them down, what tones break them, what pressures push them into panic, heaven has studied you. Your angel has watched those notes being taken. They have seen how certain kinds of delay crush you more than they grow you, and how certain kinds of pressure actually help you see clearly. They have seen what kinds of closed doors send you spiraling into shame, and what kinds of redirection you can handle now that you couldn't before. Guidance for you now is not generic. It is personalized by all the nights you have cried yourself honest. The way God leads you today takes your story into account. That is not weakness, that is covenant. You have seen it in small ways. You notice that God rarely speaks to you through fear. Fear used to be the loudest voice in your life. Every decision was a rush. Do this now or lose everything. As you've brought those panicked tears to him again and again, he's been detoxing your guidance from that voice. Now, when fear shouts, you don't feel the same agreement from heaven that you once did. Something in you pauses and says, wait, this urgency feels different. This is my old anxiety, not God. That discernment is not an accident. It's the fruit of many nights when you cried, I'm tired of being ruled by fear. I don't want fear to sound like you anymore. Your angel has watched God honor that. They have watched him speak to you more through quiet conviction and persistent peace, less through panic. You've also noticed that God has been changing your relationships around your tears. There was a time when your crying only happened alone, hidden, in private. Now, slowly, he has been bringing one or two people who don't shame you for feeling deeply. People with whom you can be honest without being labeled dramatic. You didn't know how much you needed that. You only cried out, God, I'm so tired of being the strong one. Heaven answered by placing in your path voices that reflect his heart for you. Voices that say, it's okay to feel this. Your tears don't scare me. You don't have to apologize for hurting. Those people are not perfect. But their presence around your tears is a sign. Heaven has no intention of letting you walk through every dark night completely alone anymore. Your guardian angel stands near them too, because they know you are more likely to hear God accurately when you are not drowning in isolation. And then there's this. Your tears have influenced the kind of assignments heaven trusts you with. You think your sensitivity disqualifies you from being used. Heaven disagrees. Who better to comfort others than someone who has wept like you have? Who better to recognize the look in someone's eyes when they're fine, but actually breaking, than someone who has practiced that look in their own mirror? Who better to speak hope to the one who says, nothing changes when I pray, than someone who has sat in that sentence and later discovered how untrue it was? Your tears have trained you to see under the surface. Your angel has seen how often now you notice the quiet one in the room, the friend who suddenly goes silent, the co-worker who changes the subject too quickly, the stranger whose smile doesn't reach their eyes. You feel a tug, you send a message, you ask a simple, are you really okay? Sometimes they open up, sometimes they don't, but heaven smiles anyway. Because each of those moments is another example of how your tears have not been wasted. They have become a lens that makes you dangerous to despair, not because you are perfect, but because you recognize its shadow. You know the sound of a breaking heart. You know the silence that hides it. You know the words you wish someone had said to you on certain nights. So God sends you now into spaces as someone who can say those words for him. You have no idea how often you have been heaven's answer to someone else's tears. As you cursed your own sensitivity, calling it a burden, heaven was quietly weaving it into the way you carry his compassion. So when you ask, what has really changed because I cried? Heaven answers, more than you know. The way we lead you, the people around you, the assignments we trust you with, the paths we block because we know how deeply they would wound you, the paths we open because we know how beautifully you will recognize someone else's pain and represent our heart there. Your tears didn't just spill and vanish. They have shaped the atmosphere around your life. They have adjusted the tone of heaven's guidance toward you. And they have turned you into someone who can stand in a room full of people who seem fine and still hear the hidden frequency of another soul crying out the way you once did. There are chapters of your life you have already labeled as finished. This is just how I am now. This is just how my story turned out. And this is the damage I have to live with. You look at those seasons and see a straight line. Pain followed by more pain, followed by regret. You replay what happened, how you reacted, what you lost, what you broke, what was taken from you. And the conclusion you quietly live with is, that was the moment everything went off track. You assume that heaven sees it the same way. A red X over whole years, a sad footnote in the story of your life. Your guardian angel knows how differently those chapters look from above. When heaven looks back over your timeline, it does not see a row of sterile events. It sees where your tears fell. Your tears are markers of where your heart was overwhelmed, where your innocence was crushed, where your trust was broken, where your hope was stolen, and where you cried out, even if only silently, God, please don't leave me here. Don't let this be the end of my story. You might not remember praying anything like that. You might only remember the sobbing, the shaking, the sense that you were drowning, but heaven heard the deeper line underneath. I still want you. I still want something different. I still long for a life that doesn't feel this dark. God has never taken those cries lightly. You see those chapters as your worst shame. He sees them as proof that even at your most broken, you still turn toward him, maybe not with polished faith. Maybe not with confident declarations, maybe not even with many words, but you did not run away forever. You lifted your eyes even for a second and said, "Help." Heaven moved on that single word. You thought your bad decisions had permanently wrecked the blueprint of your life. Heaven knew that the blueprint included your detours. Not because God caused your pain, not because he wanted you to suffer, but because he always knew exactly how to redeem even the parts of your story you wish had never happened. Your tears in those seasons became ink that heaven uses now to write something you never could have imagined. A story where the same places that once smelled like death begin to carry the fragrance of healing. You have already seen small hints of this. You find yourself sitting with someone who is going through what you once went through, and suddenly your old pain makes sense in a new way. You say things like, "I've been where you are. I remember feeling like that. I didn't think I'd make it out either." And you mean it. Your words carry weight they would never have carried if you had only read about suffering in a book. You earned that weight in nights of tears. Your angel has watched the way people's shoulders drop when they hear you say, "Me too." They have seen the way relief crosses faces that were braced for judgment, expecting to be told to just have more faith, and instead hearing that their tears do not disqualify them. Your story is already ministering in ways you haven't fully noticed, because you're so used to despising the parts of your history that hurt. Heaven is not asking you to call evil good, to pretend betrayal was a blessing, to romanticize abuse or loss. Heaven is asking you to notice that your tears in those places have given you a kind of sight. You see through things more quickly now. You recognize manipulative patterns faster than you used to. You sense spiritual danger in atmospheres other people call normal. You pick up on sadness behind jokes. You hear despair under, "I'm fine." That is not paranoia. That is redeemed sensitivity. Your tears have sharpened your discernment, and as you keep walking with God, he is slowly taking that discernment and pairing it with healing so that you don't live constantly triggered, but constantly aware, able to spot darkness without being swallowed by it. You thought your tears only left stains on your pillow. They have also left records in heaven, records of every time you came to the end of yourself and didn't run into permanent hardness. Records of every time you cracked open instead of sealing shut. Records of every moment when you said, even without realizing, "I still want you, even if I don't understand you, even if I'm angry, even if I'm tired." Your guardian angel has stood over those records, not as a cold archivist, but as someone who has been commissioned to walk you forward into the chapters your tears helped open. Chapters where you no longer see yourself as permanently broken, but as deeply mended. Chapters where you no longer hide your tender places in shame, but offer them to God, and watch him use them as channels of comfort for others. Chapters where you look back over the worst nights and say, with honest awe, I would never choose to go through that again. But I cannot deny who I have become with him because of it. I am softer and stronger, more discerning and more compassionate, more aware of my need and more anchored in his faithfulness. My tears did not write the end of my story. They changed who I am in the middle of it. You do not have to fully understand how God will redeem every specific detail. You are not responsible for making meaning out of every wound, but you can let heaven speak a different sentence over your life than the one your shame keeps repeating. Not, it's over, you ruined it. This is just who you are now, but your tears have never been the proof that you are finished. They have always been the evidence that your story with me is still in motion. If you could hear your life the way heaven hears it, you would realize that your tears have never fallen into silence. From your side, they sounded like broken breathing, quiet sobs, wet pillows, long showers where you let the water hide your crying. From heaven's side, they sounded like a steady signal, not the noise of someone weak, but the transmission of someone honest. You have spent years judging yourself for feeling too much, for crying too easily, for making a big deal out of things others dismiss. Heaven has never joined that criticism. God never said, get over it, stop crying, you're wasting my time. He said, I see you. I know exactly why that hurt so badly. I know where it touched old wounds. I know the story behind every tear you don't even remember. Your guardian angel has stood in every room you've cried in. They saw the first tears you shed as a child when you didn't feel safe. They saw the hidden tears you shed as a teenager when you didn't feel enough. They saw the exhausted tears you shed as an adult when you didn't know how much more you could carry. They have never once rolled their eyes or shrugged and called you dramatic. They have treated each tear as information heaven uses to guide you, where you need protection, where you need boundaries, where you need truth to confront lies, where you need comfort more than answers, where you are ready for change, even if you don't know how to start. Your tears have not always received the response you wanted. You wanted instant relief, immediate solutions, visible miracles. Sometimes God gave them. Sometimes he gave you something deeper instead, a new level of strength, a cleaner sense of self, a clearer vision of what love really is, a gentler heart toward others who hurt. He has been changing you from the inside out, using your tears not as evidence against you, but as material to shape you with. You don't see it all yet. You still have nights where you wonder, am I really growing? Or am I stuck in the same cycle of breaking down and getting back up? Heaven sees a different picture. They see someone who now pauses where they used to rush, someone who now prays where they used to numb, someone who now says no where they used to tolerate anything just to avoid being alone, someone who now reaches out to others in pain instead of hiding their own and pretending no one else matters. That is not the same person who cried years ago thinking, I'll never change. I'll always be like this. You have changed, and you are still changing. Not because you finally became strong enough on your own, but because every time your heart shattered and turned toward God, even in a whisper, he came closer. Closer in ways you felt and in ways you didn't. Closer through people, through scripture, through inner nudges, through closed doors, through slow, patient healing. Closer through videos like this one, where somehow the words on a screen sound like they were written for you. They are not here by accident. Right now, in this moment, heaven is using them as another small proof that your tears have never been ignored. Not the ones you cried last week, not the ones you cried years ago, not the ones you're holding back even now. If you feel the rise in your chest again, the sting in your eyes, the familiar urge to shut down, you don't have to panic. You don't have to apologize for being too emotional. You can let those tears do what they were always meant to do. Turn your face toward the one who has never once tuned you out. You can say, even if it's messy, even if it's quiet, Jesus, here I am again. You know what this is about better than I do. I give you every story behind these tears, every fear, every disappointment, every ache. Don't let this pain make me harder. Use it to draw me closer, heal what I can't see, lead me where I can't yet walk. And teach me to trust that you really have heard every cry. Heaven does not need more polished speeches from you. Heaven wants your real heart. And if this message has met you in a night like that, if you feel seen, understood, less alone, know this. You don't have to walk this journey by yourself. You are welcome to stay close to this space, to let divine frequency be a place where your soul is reminded again and again that your life has never been random, that your tears have always been heard, and that the God who listened to you in the dark is still speaking, still guiding, still turning even your deepest pain into a path that leads you back to his heart.